Hey church, so this is something that I've wanted to share with you for a little while now. Let's talk about our trip to Athens. So I'd love you to pray about joining me in Athens in early 2023, and let me tell you why. So we are wanting to go to Athens together in early 2023. February or March look like the preferred month for most people. As we'll talk about a few times in the next few minutes, we want to be as flexible as possible with this trip. So what that means is, as soon as we've got a core of people for whom a certain date works, that's when we are gonna go. As you can see from this sample schedule, we are thinking of going for 4 days and 3 nights. And as we're going to talk about, the flexibility built into this means it is going to be such a great trip. So the idea is we arrive on the first day, we spend a bit of time settling in, enjoying Athens, and then we meet for dinner in the evening of the first day. Day 2 is when the Bible teaching portion of the trip kicks off. We're going to block off the mornings for Bible study. So we're going to start the day with breakfast, and then on the morning of the second day, we're going to head down to the Acropolis Museum, the Acropolis complex itself, and look at a passage from Revelation 2. There are so many examples of what is talked about in Revelation 2 in and around Athens, and it speaks to living out your faith in a culture that very much doesn't want you to live out your faith. So it's very applicable for us now as well. We're then going to block off the afternoons for you to enjoy Athens in the ways that you want to do so. I said this is going to be like no other Bible teaching trip that you've ever been on before, and this is one of the reasons why. I think we've all been places and not really seen that place. Maybe we've been in a conference, we've been with work, we've transited through somewhere, and we get home and people ask, oh, what was it like? And we've been so hyper-focused on why we were there, we missed really enjoying the place. So we want to block off the afternoons for free time. And so however you want to enjoy Athens, you will be able to every afternoon, and then we'll come back together for dinner in the evening. The third day is probably the heaviest and busiest day. We've spent a couple of days kind of getting into a groove, and the third day we're going to do a couple of different Bible studies in the morning. So we'll meet for breakfast as the previous day, and then we're going to start the day with a study on 1 Thessalonians, the return of Jesus. There are some spectacular examples in and around Athens of the kinds of things that Paul says to the Thessalonians, and it helps us to connect with and understand the return of Jesus in ways that we just cannot do sitting in church on a Friday. To stand there, to see it, to walk it, to experience it is just so good. We're then going to go from there to perhaps the jewel in the crown of this Bible teaching part of the trip. We're going to go to the very place where Paul stood. We're going to walk the roads that he walked, stand in the place where he stood to deliver his sermon in Acts 17. It's nailed to the wall of the place where he stood. And having been there in the summer, to stand where he stood, to look out over the city from the Areopagus, this giant rock formation, to stand on top of it, to see the views, is just spectacular. And then we will break for lunch, and the afternoon is yours, and we'll come back together for dinner. On the morning of day 4, we'll have breakfast together, and then we will have a bit of an overview of 1st and 2nd Corinthians. Again, we don't need to travel to Corinth because there are so many examples around Athens of the kinds of things that Paul talks about. And again, the connection that we feel with Scripture, standing in the places that it was written, that were written about, is just a little bit unbelievable. It is so good. And then on the 4th day, we'll head back to Bahrain or wherever you've come from to join us. Thinking about flights, this is another example of the flexibility we want to give you. So we're very fortunate that there are direct flights from Bahrain to Athens. But we understand that if you've 20 years of air miles and loyalty points with other airlines, you might want to travel with them. So we're going to recommend these flights with Gulf Air or Aegean, but if they don't work for you, if you're coming from a different place, if you want to travel with a different airline, please do. We'll just meet you there. When we arrive into Athens, the transfer into the city is about 30 minutes in a taxi, and it's a great way to see the surrounding area as well. The same flexibility is on offer with the hotel. I stayed here in the summer. The location is fantastic. It's just a couple of minutes walk to a metro station from which we can access all the major parts of the city. The quality is great. The food is beautiful. But again, if you have an account with a different hotel chain, if this doesn't work for you, that's fine. You can meet us for breakfast, you can meet us for dinner, and we'll spend the rest of the trip together. So here's our recommendation. But if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. So in and around Athens, we've said a couple of times that we want to make sure that you enjoy Athens in the way that you want to. It is a typical Southern European capital city. The architecture is a mix of old and new. It is vibrant. There's a real buzz to the place. There are markets, the cafe culture, the restaurants are fantastic. The food is unbelievably good. There are things to do with families. If you're thinking of bringing your kids on this trip, I went in the summer with my family and the four of us, had a great time. Likewise, if you're coming without children, there are galleries, museums, tasting sessions of local produce. The National Garden is a beautiful place for a walk and just to spend some time. All of that to say, we really want you, whoever you are and whatever circumstances you're coming to Athens under, we want you to enjoy being there. We want you to see and enjoy what you want from this trip. Further afield, maybe a 15-minute local train ride out of the city is the port of Piraeus, which is where Paul would have arrived to start his walk into Athens. It's a beautiful place. The beach is lovely. The harbour is also lovely. There's a beautiful little ice cream shop right on the front. And again, it's just another example of, we want you to really enjoy being here. We don't want you to be on a big box tour where you don't see what you wanted to see and you miss what you really wanted to experience in Athens. Yes, we want to make lots of time to study scripture together in the places that it happened, but we also want you to really enjoy being in Athens. If you are interested in church history, it seems like every corner in the city has an ornate, historically rich, interesting church building. And before we leave to Athens, when we've got a group and we've fixed some dates, what we want to do is offer you a couple of short classes to really prepare you for being there. One of which will be church history. How did we get to where we're at now? More specifically, why are we going to see the things that we see in Athens? And the second is an introduction to read Greek. So the New Testament was written originally in Greek. So one of the benefits of learning this with us will be that you can open up the Bible and read it in its original language, which, aside from standing in the places where it happened and seeing the things that are talked about, reading it in its original language is such a thrill. It was one of my most enjoyable classes from a master's degree that I did a few years ago. But in terms of going to Athens specifically, it means that all of the signs, the menu, all of the stuff around the city, you'll have a very basic understanding of because you can read them as well. So I'd really encourage you to join me in Athens in early 2023. As soon as we've got a core of people and some dates that work for them, that's when we are gonna go. Having been there in the summer, I can wholeheartedly tell you that being in the places where the Bible happened, seeing the architecture that Paul and other biblical writers talk about, walking the roads that they would have walked, connects us to Scripture in such a deep and a rich way, and you will absolutely not regret coming with us on this trip. If you've got any questions or queries, things that you want to talk about regarding this trip, please do get in touch. I would love to chat to you about it. God bless.